To get this out of the way as quickly as I can, emulators are not illegal. This comment usually comes up within this conversation, and I really would like to clarify. Pirating ROMs and ISOs is illegal, but the emulator itself is not, and there are legal ways to obtain ROMs and ISOs. I prefer the original experience. This is a statement I've heard so many times, and I've never quite understood it. I was born in '91, so I'm 25 years old. I have 2 older brothers and an older sister, so I got a heavy dose of the 80s. I spent so many of my unproductive hours growing up playing my NES, my SNES, my Game Gear, my Game Boy Advance, my GameCube, my Wii, my PlayStation 2, and I still have all of those original games sitting in a box. And it's cool to have, but I've always preferred to play on an emulator. I have so many memories attached to these consoles and video games growing up as a kid. If I wasn't outside riding my bike, playing basketball, playing baseball, I was inside playing video games, neglecting my homework and pissing off my teachers. I easily passed all in-class work, but I never did my homework because as far as I was concerned, once I was out of school and shouldn't do homework. In my mind as a child, video games were more important to me than homework, and I have a lot of fond memories attached to those games, but I still don't understand that statement. Let's take all emotions away from this. All feelings towards those consoles, all feelings towards those games, all nostalgia can be thrown out the window momentarily while we talk about emulators. Let's talk purely from a factual standpoint. Emulators do things that the original consoles could never do. Graphically, games look a lot better in an emulator. You can play at a much higher internal resolution than the original console. For example, on the PlayStation 2, the resolution changed per game to game, but generally was somewhere between 720 by 480 to 640 by 480. This is very low. You can bump this to whatever you want in PCSX2. If I wanted to play at 4K, I could. And it's native, not up-resed. It gets rid of that grainy look that PS2 games had. Textures look a lot smoother, and things just look nicer in general. But you can do a lot of other things like turn on anti-aliasing and anisotropic filtering, which again will make the game look a lot smoother and clearer. There's a lot of other graphical tweaks you can do as well. For example, if I wanted to play Fire Emblem Path of Radiance on Dolphin, a Wii and GameCube emulator, I can click a checkbox that says widescreen hack, and this game will run natively at 16:9. The game originally had no widescreen options. You were forced to play it at a 4:3 aspect ratio, so letterbox. But by simply clicking one thing, suddenly the game runs widescreen, and you don't have to do anything else. You have plenty of other options within emulators, like whatever controller you wish to use. You can use the original controller if you want to, or you can use a controller that you would prefer. If I'm playing something like Super Smash Bros. Melee or Project M through Dolphin, I'm going to want to plug in my Mayflash adapter into my computer, and then plug my GameCube controller into my adapter and start playing. It simply wouldn't be Smash Bros. If I wasn't using a GameCube controller. That just wouldn't work in my mind. But when I play PS2 games on PCSX2, I use a 360 controller instead because I don't really like the PlayStation controller. I've always felt like the D-pad and the analog stick needs to be swapped around, and it cramps up my hand as a result. Upon doing this, you can also rebind the keys as much as you want to. If you don't like that shoot is R1 in most PS2 games, you can simply just put it to one of the proper triggers on your 360 controller. But now let's get into all the amazing things emulators are doing that the original hardware could never dream of doing. I'll make 2 examples. The first one is NetPlay on Dolphin. You can play games that never had any online capability before, online with other people, as long as you have a good connection to them. 2 good examples of this is Super Smash Bros. Melee and Super Smash Bros. Project M, which is a mod, and NetPlay still works with it. The fact that I can play Melee online with someone that lives 5 states away from me is just amazing. The second thing I want to bring up is Dolphin Vr. Yes, virtual reality with Nintendo games. This works on a wide variety of games, and what you're seeing right now is one of the top level Melee players testing it out for the first time.
Alright, what does this stage look like? What? Whoa. What? Like what? It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
So as we've established, emulators are clearly a better experience. But then why do I hear, I want the original experience, so often? Now I could understand this statement from a collector's point of view. I still have all my original GameCube games, Game Boy Advance games, PS2 games. Having all of them in a box is sort of like a collection of my childhood, and it's awesome to have them there. But I still prefer to play on an emulator because it gives me so many advantages that the original hardware doesn't. On top of that, it's simply just more convenient to double click on an emulator and then open a ROM and an ISO rather than actually setting up the physical hardware. The only logical answer I can come to when it comes to people that prefer the original over emulators is purely nostalgia. They want the original experience they had growing up playing as a kid. I can understand this, I just don't agree with it. When I hear someone tell me that they prefer to play on the original console, at risk of sounding like a rude jerk here, in my mind all I hear is, my preference is a lesser gaming experience. It's particularly bad when you deal with the purists, the ones that have a big smug look on their face when they say they prefer the original. At risk of sounding like a rude jerk again, I simply don't understand the logic behind it. I prefer having a better experience with that specific game. I'm playing the game for the video game. I'm not playing it for the experience around me. I don't care what I'm playing it on, I just want the best possible way to play it. And an emulator certainly is the best possible way to play that game. So it always confuses me when people give me that look like, ew, why would you play in an emulator when you can play the original thing? And I would give them the same look back, and in my mind to be thinking, how could you be so stupid to prefer such an inferior experience? I likely sound like a rude jerk, and I don't want to stop anyone from enjoying the games they like the way they prefer to. But I guess this is just something that we can agree to disagree on.